This is the Al-Rowwad Theater Group from Aida Camp in Palestine, and I'm going to be interviewing the founder and director, Abdel Fattah Abu Sarur. So when was the troupe here in the States last?
Well, last time we came, well, it was the first time, in fact, in 2005, in June, July 2005.
And now you've been touring New England, and what cities?
Well, we have been in Boston area, Cambridge, Brookline, and Boston, where we did yesterday our last two performances in the Central Square Theater. We have performed the first night in the Palestinian Cultural Center, and then Brookline Library, the church, the first Congregational Church in Cambridge, and the Central Square Theater. The kids have a workshop, theater workshop with the underground theater, young American people, and it was very interesting and intense experience for a lot of them.
And are you doing one play or several plays?
Well, in fact, we are touring mainly with one, but because of the success of the first play, we are the children of the camp. And the people wanted to know more about what is going on. So we are performing beside the Blame the Wolf. Also, we are the children of the camp, and most of the time excerpts from this play. However, in the Palestinian Cultural Center in Boston, we performed the full play, We Are the Children of the Camp, because it's focused on the Palestinian story from our point of view. Blame the Wolf is more to deal with the stereotypes, and that in each story there are two sides, and maybe we should listen to these two sides before believing in stereotypes and judging others based upon the reputation that is made out of them. And we chose folk tales to do that.
What kind of responses are you getting from the audiences?
Well, we arrived on the 9th of July, and we finished performances in Boston area and Massachusetts on the 17th. So it was a great responses, in fact. People were very welcoming, very warm, and thanked really this opportunity to hear us. Some of them were, it's the first time they ever met a Palestinian, and ever see a Palestinian children unreal in flesh and blood. It was an intense experience for some of them. It was an amazing experience for our children. And most of the time when people were asking what did they like, what did they didn't like, what shocked them, most of the time they would say nature, green spaces, water, rivers, freedom of circulation, you have no checkpoints. And some of them said, well, you have electricity and water all the time. So, but I guess what impressed them the most was the warmth of people and families who hosted them. They were in houses with families.
Now, do you notice differences yourself in our country in the last several years?
Well, in fact, we are sometimes exposed to different experiences where people think because you are Palestinian, that means you are anti-Semite, or you are criticizing or against Jews somehow. And we had like an article in the Jewish Advocate in Boston where some people said, well, we shouldn't be allowed to perform and so on. It didn't happen in 2005, in fact. But on the other side, there was a lot of supportive Jews who really wanted to hear and wanted to listen. And despite their dispute in themselves, how they can reconciliate the truth and what they know with supporting Israel blindly sometimes. So we had some hot discussions and beautiful discussions, and sometimes not very beautiful discussions. But I guess the responses were, in general, were very beautiful.
Let's talk about Aida Camp. People here don't really know what a refugee camp is like. Where did people, now it's next to Bethlehem, where did the families come from that went to Aida Camp, and when did they do this?
Well, Aida Camp is one of 59 refugee camps, in fact. There is 19 in the West Bank, 8 in Gaza, 10 in Syria, 10 in Jordan, and 12 in Lebanon. Besides actually the camps in Egypt in the beginning and in Iraq, and still renewing refugee camps in Iraq last year and this year. But Aida Camp is located in the north of Bethlehem, south of Jerusalem. It's like the border point, and so every incursion and invasion to Bethlehem area passes through Aida Camp. Actually, there is about 5,000 people living in Aida Camp, and representing 41 different villages among the 534 villages which were destroyed by the Zionist groups between 47 and 49. So we are refugees from the 48 war and even before the war, and people have been forced out of their villages by the Zionist troops at that time. I remember my family was chased away from Beit Natif, which is our village, on the 19th of October 1948. And they stayed for 2 months in the field around the village, trying to get back, and every time they tried to get back, the Zionist soldiers were shooting at them. So then they moved to Beit Sahur, rented a room, until the UNRWA, the UNRWA, started renting lands to establish these refugee camps, and then distributing tents. So they were created like in 49, 50, and then the tents remained about 6 years, because they thought, well, Israel will apply the UN Resolution 194 and allow the return of refugees. But seeing that the situation was not as temporary as it was supposed to be, they started to build shelters, which were rooms of 9 to 12 square meters, one room for families with 6 members or less, or 2 rooms for bigger families. And then little by little, people started to build on their own, because these shelters were also built as temporary, with thickness of walls and the ceiling not more than 10 centimeters. So now there is 5,000 people, 66% are under 18 years old, 77% of unemployment rate, 80% of families under the level of poverty. And
what percent on poverty?
77% unemployment rate and 80% of families under the poverty level. I mean, some people...
And this is the Palestinian poverty level, and we're not talking about U.S.
Yes, the Palestinian poverty level. And I mean, some people do work, but they earn less than the minimum income under the level of poverty. So we have a young population in major, with no playgrounds or green spaces whatsoever, and we are surrounded by this wall of separation, which was started in 2002 during the invasion of Bethlehem, and completed around the camp in 2006, which is
the whole camp is surrounded by a wall?
The eastern side, northern side, and part of the western side. So the access point we have is from the south and southeast to get out or in the camp. The eastern side mostly is closed by the wall of separation, 30 feet high, and the northern side is completely closed. And all the space which we were used when we were children to perform, to do plays, to play soccer, to swim in the big holes of the ground when it rained, are now closed for our children. So that's why the empty streets are the playgrounds, actually.
Now I understand the Pope Benedict, came to Aida Camp. How did that happen?